still a child, didn't get the chance.
Now you say you got a touch so good.
you never wanna leave. Don't. Gonna wear that dress you like, skin tight. Do my hair up real nice. And sync up at my skin to your heart beating. Cause I just wanna look good for you, good for you. I just wanna look good for you, good for you. Let me show you how proud I am to be yours. Leave this dress a mess and I'll fall. Still look good for you, good for you. I'm a market diamonds. I'm a market diamond. Could even make that Tiffany jealous. You say give it to your heart, so bad, make you never wanna leave. I won't. Gonna wear that dress you like, skin tight. Do my hair up real nice. And sync up at my skin to how you're breathing. I just wanna look good for you, good for you. I just wanna look good for you, good for you. Let me show how proud I am to be yours. Leave this dress a mess and don't fall. Still look good for you, good for you. Good for you, good for you. Good for you, good for you. Trust me, I can take you there. Trust me, I can take you there. Trust me, trust me, trust me, I. Just wanna look good for you, good for you. Baby, let me be good to you, good to you. Let me show you how proud I am to be yours. Leave this dress a mess and I'll fall. Still look good for you, good for you. Trust me, I can take you there. Trust me, I can take you there. Trust me, trust me, trust me, I was on the sky, burning in your eyes. You look at me, baby, I wanna catch on fire. It's buried in my soul, like California gold. You found the light in me that I couldn't find. So when I'm all choked up, but I can't find the words. Every time we say goodbye, baby, it hurts. When the sun goes down on the
Was it posted 4 places?
Yeah.
When you look at me under hope or faith, I'll always remember us this way.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. A very warm welcome indeed if you've just joined us, either here in the auditorium at the MTC or virtually anywhere you are in the world. I hope you did enjoy your lunch and indeed any of the sessions you were attending over that. And of course, plenty more opportunities for networking at various times. In a moment, it will be my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Matt. But ahead of that, a reminder, our next break will be at 2:40 and that the day is due to wrap up at around 4:30. Once again, you can see the remaining agenda on the screen, which of course you can either get a hard copy from reception if you'd like, or download it either at the website or by scanning the QR code on the side screens as well. So let us move on to our next presentation, Manufacturing Resilience Through Cybersecurity. As our speaker will highlight, digital transformation and the push for increased productivity have led to converged IT and OT networks. The need to discover assets, understand vulnerabilities, and assign risk is ever more paramount. And here to tell us about it, please welcome to the stage the EMEA Field CTO at Clarity, Matt Logan.
Thank you, everybody. Pleasure to meet you all. So, as Neil said, my name is Matt Logan. I've been in cybersecurity for 23 years now. Just coming up to a year with Clarity, and here today to talk you through manufacturing resilience and cybersecurity. So, we have quite a large customer base, and obviously we're in regular cadence and contact with them, and we're seeing a lot of key trends happening across the industry. One of which is this digital transformation push. So the increased connectivity of IT and OT environments is becoming more and more prevalent, which has inherent risks associated with it. And as we go through the presentation, I'll start talking to some of those risks. But the connected devices, the ease in which adversaries can potentially gain access into not just IT, but also in the resulting connected OT infrastructure, is quite a concern for a lot of our customers. Add to that the heightened threat activity. We all read the newspapers, we've seen the press. We're seeing a lot more attacks on not just critical national infrastructure, but also any sort of manufacturer, processor. Couple that with the additional pressure of all the regulatory compliances that are now being produced and implemented by various governments and organizations around the world, is really putting a lot of pressure on manufacturing as it is today. One of the main things we're seeing is, again, going back to this interconnected IT and OT infrastructure, we're seeing, if I pull out these 6 particular ransomware attacks here, these have all manifested from the IT infrastructure into OT. So a lot of these attacks took out large organizations for several days. Production had to stop, happened across the world, some of which you've heard of before. The key thing here is these ones in particular, again, just to re-emphasize, the adversary gained entry through the IT environment and led into the OT infrastructure itself. Just a quick example of the sort of things that happen during a ransomware attack. And this particular example, the key point here is from T0 to full lateral spread of this particular bit of ransomware took 43 minutes. Now, adversaries will typically get into a look to attack an organization, typically through email. It's the most and the most common way and easiest way to get into an organization. So a malicious payload in an email, a link, a URL link that somebody clicks. Maybe the email's been crafted to look like it's from somebody internal, somebody of power, maybe the CEO. 9 times out of 10, it's user error, how these things start. And this is one of the things we need to look at address as well. But in this example, an email is delivered, the user clicks on a URL. That instantly initiates a download from a malicious website. I won't go through all the details here, but from time click to full lateral movement and spread across the environment, 43 minutes is not long at all. And again, this came in from the IT environment into the OT and started spreading. And it doesn't just affect a particular sector, it's multiple sectors within the manufacturing industry. So what are cyber physical systems? Cyber physical systems are integrated in modern operations, as I'm sure you're all aware. These can be smart grid, autonomous vehicles, patient monitoring. There was a ransomware that hit a hospital in Germany several years ago, and unfortunately there was life lost because the ransomware encrypted a lot of the health systems, and there was someone hooked up to one, and they couldn't any longer sustain that person's life due to not being able to get to this particular bit of healthcare machinery. These systems are paramount, A, to increase productivity, to maintain life, to keep people comfortable if we're looking at building management systems. All of these cyber physical systems are systems that need to be understood. They need to be secured, and we can do that in many ways. Now, we do a regular poll. This one's from last year. We've just released our new one from 2024. We poll 1,100 CISOs across all of our customer base in manufacturing. And these are some of the key takeaways that we've seen. So 75% of organizations have experienced a ransomware attack in 2023. And this is out of the 1,100 people we polled. 55% of those reported, of the 75, reported multiple site impacts or impacted. 67% of those organizations incurred a cost, whether that's a cleanup cost, a downtime in production, or we've seen people unfortunately pay ransomware demands. But the average cost of $100,000 there. Actually, the new report this year, it's up to $500,000. So we're seeing an increase in the payments and also in the financial implications. The most important one on this slide is the 95% here. So 95% of all CISOs are now, or soon will be, responsible for securing OT as well as IT. I'm not going into detail here, but there are many regulatory frameworks that people have to adhere to. The latest one, which I'm sure you're all aware of, is NIS2 that was brought into play in Europe in, I think it was the 17th of October. But these are critical frameworks that have been put in place to help drive and understand and protect critical national infrastructure manufacturing. Also, one thing with NIS2, and again, you may or may not be aware, is they've broadened the scope of what classes as critical national infrastructure in Europe. So now anything food and bev production, from packaging through to the actual materials itself, the consumable goods, is now classed as critical national infrastructure. So it needs to be protected in a specific way. So why is IT different to OT, and why is OT different to IT? What we've seen over the past 10 years of doing this as an organization is a lot of organizations are trying to implement IT known processes, software standards into the OT environment, and it just doesn't work. You need to take a separate approach to the OT environment. We're looking at completely different systems, different proprietary protocols, diverse communications, complex architectures, operational resilience. You can't take machines down. They need to remain active and producing. We've seen, unfortunately, quite a few examples of where people have taken IT assets, security, controls, discovery techniques into OT and have knocked out entire production sites for more than 24 hours. So what we do and what we do best is help you and customers understand what assets are in an environment. And I'll talk through that in a bit more by intelligently looking at those assets, talking to those assets, and not relying on IT tools to try and take that approach into OT. Now, again, just to clarify a bit more on that, the idea and notion of leveraging IT assets, we see incompatibilities. It's a common thing. Most IT assets don't understand the protocols and the way OT assets operate. Using this then obviously adds inherent risk and operational risk. Asset discovery as well. Not all organizations know exactly what is in their OT environment, down to every single PLC, safety system, logic controller, whatever it may be. Getting an understanding of those assets is the real foundation of a cyber physical system OT security strategy. Using IT assets to do so could knock out. They're quite intrusive, IT discovery assets. You have passive technologies as well, which don't quite cover all of the complex architecture of where all of your assets are placed within an OT environment. And you're just not going to get that full inventory of assets that you need. And with that lack of visibility, you're never going to be able to put in place a truly operationalized sort of foundation to work from when it comes to securing cyber physical systems. So we need to move away from stitching different products together, taking a bit of IT, taking a bit of OT. We need to start using intelligent systems to really look at what cyber physical systems you have in place. So how do we go about doing that? You'll recognize this sort of approach: people, process, technology. We've changed it up ever so slightly, but the key thing is people. We need to educate users not to click on that link in an email or to download something from a website, which could potentially lead to a vulnerability or a threat or some exploit. You need to bring on board all of the organizations within your organization that are going to monitor these assets. So everyone from IT and OT, SOC teams, production managers, plant managers, they need to understand what systems they have to protect and how we're going to go about protecting them. When it moves on to the technology, there are several ways to do the asset discovery. There's the passive asset discovery, so you can place hardware around and look and monitor the network traffic. The best way is to do an intelligent discovery, so an active search across the network. And again, the key thing here is not using an IT technology, which is very loud. And when it broadcasts across the OT infrastructure, you can run the risk of, as I said before, crippling these OT infrastructures, knocking out machinery, plants, etc. So it's a strategic, a surgical query of those assets, and that's key. One thing we've done very well is we have I'll show you on the slide at the end, a lot of our investors are actually out there as well. So we work with all the major component manufacturers. In our test lab back at HQ, we're constantly looking at the different languages used between different PLCs and different machinery, so that when we do build our safe active queries, we can go ahead and ask those devices what they are, who they are in their native language and their proprietary language, which reduces the risk of knocking any systems out. But the asset discovery is the real key piece here. Sorry, excuse me. So assets across all different areas of the OT environment. Excuse me. So depending on where and how your OT environments are set up, we can look at scanning or querying or looking at or all the segments of the Purdue model, for example, querying anything from robotics to PLCs, HMIs, whatever it may be, gathering the intel of those assets, not just the name, not just the IP address, but also then looking at the exposure management or the risks or vulnerabilities associated with those particular assets. Once the foundation has been set and we understand the assets, then we can start intelligently looking at, well, okay, what's the vulnerability score of a certain asset? Is there CVSS or something associated with that asset? What is the likelihood of that being exposed? Is that device connected to the internet? Is it not connected? Is it sat On a production line that has no external connectivity, there's many, many ways to look at how these assets can be touched, also the associated risk level with them. Secure access is another key point here as well. So we see many organizations who rely on third parties to remote into their OT environments to perform scheduled maintenance and upkeep of the machinery, the PLCs, whatever it may be. But it's how do those organizations get into that environment? What is the secure access process? Do you have somebody coming to site and you monitor them? Do you let them remote in? Are your assets in the cloud? Are they cloud connected? There's many questions to ask, but the key as well is without hindering business and allowing production to continue, providing access to third parties into those environments, but to monitor what they're doing, to watch what they're doing, an over-the-shoulder view, a secure access, maybe a specific time. The last point there is the continual monitoring and alerting. You need to know what's going on in those environments. Maybe a new vulnerability has been found in a particular PLC. Through our management console, we can alert you on those latest vulnerabilities. But again, that vulnerability may not necessarily be relevant because if that asset is not connected to the internet or it's behind a segregated area, then the exposure of that is a lot less than, say, an internet-facing asset that has maybe a lesser criticality score. So just to touch base on a few more of these things again. So the desired outcome of any sort of OT security program is compliance. Regulatory compliance is a key thing. So how do we adhere to that? Let's look at every single asset in that environment. So a complete inventory of assets. Build that programmatic foundation so that your downstream cybersecurity controls, vulnerability risk management, mitigation policies can be built around that. But then also look at the future as well. You know, a lot of my customers are growing exponentially. Car manufacturers, albeit the manufacturing industry in Germany, automotive is being questioned at the moment. One of my customers is moving from 500,000 assets to 1.5 million assets in the next 2 years. And those assets are anything from a PLC to a robot to whatever it may be. So look at what's happening in the future. Understand those assets and what controls need to be placed around them and, you know, the potential risk. We still have the same challenges. Proprietary protocols, new technologies, new manufacturers. How do we query them? How do we do a safe search? Diverse production lines. And again, this mindset of relying on IT tools. I can't repeat that enough. It's a real headache I see of hey, we've got this scanner tool in IT, let's just use it in OT. Don't do that. Honestly, don't do that. Complex networks and asset ownership. So, vulnerability management. Assets are vulnerable. There's a common scoring, as you'll know, CVSS is a common scoring, or EPSS are ways to assign a criticality rating to an asset. Now, there are key few things here. Firstly, it's very rare for a zero-day vulnerability to be the cause of a breach. It's very rare. Only 2 to 7% of vulnerabilities are actually ever exploited. And vulnerability management doesn't account for the broader exposure and attack vectors. So my earlier slide talking about ransomware, delivery, whatever the delivery mechanism is, whether it's a website, an email, whatever it may be, the mechanism won't necessarily lead to a vulnerability being breached. Breach is the wrong word, but a vulnerability being exposed. The other key thing here is vulnerability management does not consider the business outcome. So you may have a critical vulnerability on a PLC, and the immediate reaction is we need to patch that. But what if you can't take that offline? What if that PLC is, again, in a segregated network behind a firewall? So the exposure management looks at it from a different perspective as to, yes, this may have a high CVSS score, but actually it's safe. We can ignore that. So the key 3 takeaways. Number 1, gain full visibility. Do this in an intelligent way. Safe, active queries. Understanding all the assets. How are those assets communicating? Are assets communicating externally? Why are they communicating externally? Are those assets connected to the internet? Are they safe? Are they secure? Is there a 20-year-old PLC that has a high vulnerability? It's sitting there, ticking away, hasn't been switched off for 20 years? Fine, we maybe don't need to worry about that too much. But gain that visibility and that baseline of all of those assets. Then we can start looking at integrating with this existing tech stacks and workflows. We have many integration partners, from technology partners through to service provider partners, whereby we can start drawing in information, additional information, adding and enriching that understanding of those assets. What is the asset? Where is it? What's its MAC address? Who's it talking to? Why is it there? What's its uptime? What's its downtime? And then you can start looking at extending your IT security controls into your OT environment. Promise this won't be a sales pitch, but just a bit about Clarity itself. Founded in 2015. I joined in January. I was employee 515. We're now at 650, so we're growing rapidly because of the need to protect cyber physical systems. The technology was born from the notion and understanding of protecting cyber physical systems. It's not a third-party acquisition that we've sort of hammered into shape. Understand your assets across all verticals. We work with many strategic partners, and the key here is again providing that visibility through asset discovery, asset management, exposure management, network protection, network detection, and then securing third-party access to those systems. Sorry, my throat's going. The last slide, excuse me. We have an internal research team. They've got some great collateral on the site. That's accessible. That would talk through all the inherent risks, trending information, understanding of what we see happening today against manufacturing industry. You can filter this information on vertical, on product, on many different ways. And I think that's perfect timing for my voice to go. So thank you all for your time.
Matt, thank you very much indeed. He's not going to go far. We'll let him recover his voice. But we are about to go into another panel discussion. So once again, please do start getting those questions into us. As you know, then you can go online, ask a question there. We've got the website and indeed the QR code there if you want to address any questions, whether it's to Matt or our other panelists. And let me introduce those to you now. Matt, actually, if you've recovered, you can just take seat one for me. That would be great. Thank you. Next to him, I'm going to ask the Senior Manager OT T&D Cyber Threat Management at KPMG, Mark Wilson Ramsey. In seat number 3, the Cybersecurity Advisor at Microsoft, Leslie Kipling. And seat 4, the CIO from the MTC here, that's Patrick Roxby-Cox. One of our earlier presenters is coming back, the CTO UK at Dell Technologies, Arash Ghazanfari, and a second showing again for the MD of Warren Services, Will Bridgman, representing our SMEs. They are our panelists for today's second session. And once again, we're being joined by Lauren Chambers to help facilitate all of your questions. If you missed Lauren earlier, a quick reminder that Lauren is the face of industry today, a forthcoming podcast series coming soon from the MTC. And I should say that for all of those questions we weren't able to address earlier, and indeed any questions that might come around now, Lauren has promised that she's going to be looking at those and hopefully addressing a number of those in those initial podcasts as well. So we do hope to get to everyone's questions. So just while those questions are coming in to Lauren, I'm going to just actually ask Matt, since he's only just sat down and hopefully got your voice back. Good, excellent, okay. Well, I'm just going to ask Matt our first question there, relating, of course, to what we just heard there. Matt, how can manufacturers effectively identify and protect critical assets within their converged IT and OT networks?
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's there's many ways to start this process, but really understanding the difference between IT and OT is fundamental. So most organizations do understand this. Once you've got that down, though, then you can start looking at, okay, what is the architectural setup? How are my factories built, my production lines to understand architecture, communication paths, etc. Then utilizing a technology such as the one we offer, which is able then to go and discover those assets, run inventory scans, either passive or active, and then provide a dashboard per se of all of those assets, how they're connected, how the communication paths are, where those assets communicating to, internal, external. And that's the first step of really defining the two.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Does anyone else want to come back on Matt's point at all?
I have a question,
if please.
I may.
Please.
Are we talking about OT and IT converged networking? Because I can understand signal, right? Taking signals and converging those so that we know what's happening inside the organization across different platforms, if you like. But the converged network, I mean, I suppose it sounds a little bit weird because if somebody's accidentally connected something from what, they basically fills the gap, then yes, you bypass the networking controls. But things like the parent models, that sort of thing, are exactly designed to prevent that sort of thing from happening. So to your point about architecture, is that something we should be saying that that converged networking is a good thing? Because
I don't think it's a good thing, but I think it's a necessity. But also the customers I've been dealing with the past year, they don't fully understand how the two are connected, IT and OT, but they understand the need for them to be connected. So to allow the third party to remote in and access. Now, not everybody has a secure tooling to allow and monitor third parties in. So they typically, what I've seen is let them in through the IT infrastructure. And it is a case of there's a network cable, plug it in, now my OT and IT are connected. I'm seeing manufacturers moving to the cloud, and then not necessarily IT to OT, but then your OT is then connected externally. Yes, the appropriate firewalling and network controls and NAC and all that sort of things are in place, but more and more customers are unable to understand, unable to see how those two networks are connected, which is it's an issue. It's a big issue.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think as well is on the OT side, there's less thought about it. There's a lot of talk around from the SME's perspective around cybersecurity and make sure you've got your firewalls and your switches and everything protected and your scanning. And then you're like, now I need to get someone to connect to the compressor system. And like you say, we do have a secure protocol for that to occur remotely of the company network. But as my teams in the factory demand more connectivity to make their lives easier, it then makes everyone's life easier. So I think in SME world, there is an understanding of the IT cybersecurity. Whether everyone's done anything about it or not, well, you probably know the data, but definitely on the OT side, there's less of and I think there's less thought been put into those products by the manufacturers of OT, because a lot of them expect them potentially not to be networked externally.
I would add that the piece that you covered around asset discovery is absolutely critical in my humble opinion, because if you think about the cyber security industry, most vendors are focusing on keeping the bad actors out. But there aren't many vendors who are actually thinking about what happens if the bad actors get in, and how do I recover from a disastrous cyber attack. And I think in order to be able to be in a position where you can actually recover from a disastrous cyber attack, you need to have a very good idea of your minimum viable enterprise. What are those critical assets that your organization relies upon to survive as a business? And once you understand what those critical assets are, then you're in a significantly better position to protect yourself. Without knowing what's going on in your environment, you would be a sitting duck and you would be hugely vulnerable.
Thank you.
And just to Arish's point there, I think it's understanding what is really, really important to you as a business. And I think, asset management from a vendor is really important, yes. But I think sometimes challenging what is going to be important for you as an organisation. So if you're an SME, perhaps you want to look at it very differently in terms of what's critical, what's essential, what's targeted. And you might want to target some of your particular interventions if you need to have secure remote access, for example, or you need to do something very particular. Likewise, you may have several factories, and like we've seen with Toyota when it had the 14 of those factories went down, like a really big organisation. I think if you haven't done some of that segmentation, you haven't done some of that early preparatory work, I think that's when you're going to come across. But I know that there's platforms you could use and other things, but it'd be very interesting to hear what other people think.
I think as you become more digital or digitised, or use the right terminology, you become more at risk. So our work instructions are digital, all our drawings are stored digitally. If you're a manufacturer and you're still using paper drawings and the internet goes down, well, it's fine. So we have to see that you have to use the appropriate levels depending on the criticality of losing. We have a full fibre connection with a backup satellite because we can't lose. So I think it's only going to get more important, isn't it, as we become more digital?
That is a very good point I'd love to pick up on, is just make sure that any of your recovery plan is actually on paper and not held in an asset that then gets encrypted and you can't reach it, because that's a problem, right? The other thing I think with minimal viable enterprise, we were having a quick chat about that, which is to say it's something that seems to have come back around since about the 1970s. And we really think about it as what happens in a worst case scenario. So if you're thinking about it from a lights out scenario, how do you recover? What do you need to recover first to be able to ensure that you recover your business? And I think that's a very different thing. It's interesting to me that cybersecurity was really an enterprise conversation, and cyber resilience was more from the OT environment. And these days, I'm seeing the enterprise environments talking about cyber resilience as well, because I think it's easier for people to understand what that means, as opposed to perhaps knowing a lot about cybersecurity when these are business people and just want to get their businesses back up and running. But I'm very conscious of the fact I haven't let you say anything yet.
I was going to pick up on something that Matt had trying to wind back to what the question was. Trying to remember what that was. But
I'd asked how manufacturers could effectively identify and protect critical assets within their converged IT/OT networks.
And I think the top of Matt's slide, he had a team and the combined team. I think most organisations have IT and OT assets, have separate teams with a very long history of avoiding each other, got a bit of finger pointing, agreeing disagreeably, at best. And they found ways to rub along with minimum interaction, and that's now not becoming sustainable anymore.
Right.
And I think forming that combined team, giving them joint goals, is absolutely critical, because it's having it continue to be two teams, two ways of thinking, two sets of responsibility, and so on. You'll never get to the bottom of these issues.
Hugely important point, Patrick. I think to build cyber resilience, it actually has to start at the top of the organization with executive level awareness, and then followed by an agile approach to how you approach your risk management. What is your risk landscape looks like, and how often do you update your view of that landscape? And then identifying your critical assets, as you mentioned earlier. But the most important point after that, as you say, is aligning your peoples and processes and your teams so that you can be in a position to have a repeatable, testable, proven, viable pathway to recovering your minimum viable enterprise. And people play a huge part in that. So this is not necessarily just a technology conversation. It's actually a more strategic and business level discussion.
And it's clear ownership and responsibility. There'll be gaps and overlaps in what people think they're responsible for. Form a single team who are responsible for everything, and you've dealt with them.
I think business owners do. I think obviously the reporting in the media, people see this reoccurrence of disastrous results through bad cybersecurity, and then becomes very. I was just thinking of a local instance. There was a small chain of shops or weren't able to take any payments for 4 days. So like, well, retail's quite hard anyway. No sales for 4 days is not a good place to be in. And then even our insurers are now saying you need cyber insurance. I'm just making you aware. I was out for lunch with one the other day. They were saying we make all of our customers aware that your general insurance doesn't cover cyber insurance. Just making you aware that we do offer that and you're not covered for that because it's such a thing now that they're worried the claims can be so big that they want it on phone record that they've told you that you can have insurance, it's going to cost, but you haven't got it normally. So I think people are becoming more and more aware to the, possibility of it happening.
And to that point, I think, Will, I think it's a question of when, not if, this is going to happen. And for me, it's very much have you got everything in place so that when it does occur, you can almost contain whatever that will be. And then it comes back to Leslie's point about being able to recover from that, or at least respond and then recover going forward. And then I think, for me, I go back to some of the points brought about people by Patrick. I think you've got to have that team, and I think holistically it's been very much like functional silos, and I still see that with some of the clients that we're working with. I think very much you need to really leverage some of the OEMs as well. Understand and bring the vendors in as well, bring the people who are going to give you some of those solutions. So you've got a really, really good collective brain to kind of solve these really, really complex issues, because no one organisation is going to be able to do that for you.
And if I may as well, not everything is malicious with regards to systems being taken down. You may have an inadvertent a third-party vendor coming in, remoting into a system and performing an update, and that update doesn't sit well, and it knocks out, I pick on PLCs, but knocks out a PLC, and the resultant effect is then production line down. Again, not malicious, inadvertent. It's having the ability to look at and understand if it is malicious or if it is inadvertent human error, tracking that information, being able to then backtrack what happened quickly. And again, if it is malicious, do you have to report that to a government if there's a data breach, if there's PIO data, whatever it may be, or if it is not malicious, how do we get that machine, that factory, that whatever it is, back up quickly? So, and the reason I say that is there are many ways to take down systems. So understanding what people are doing, internal, external, having that view, secure access, monitoring systems, understanding everything is paramount to keeping the lights on, keeping the factories up and running.
I think it's that also understanding that, like you said, the people are generally the vulnerability. It's like looking outside, well, what are they doing outside of work? We insist on, if you remote in from outside of the business, that you have we use Dashlane password management, like for all of your stuff, because you could have a weak personal password, but then that vulnerability creates a vulnerability in the business. So it's sometimes looking outside and doing that training with the workforce that, something you do that's nothing to do with work could ultimately affect and pull us down.
Yeah, it's keeping your password underneath your mouse mat on a post-it note. Those days are gone, I hope.
Yeah, is that not how it's done?
No, where'd you keep your mouse?
I'm just conscious of the time. Lauren, I wonder if we've got another question we could pose to our panel.
Yeah, we've had one from someone within an SME, and they have asked, how or what should I do to ensure I'm not infected by my supply chain?
Very good question. And some of the ransomware attacks I put up here, in fact, Mark and I were talking about this earlier. There was I'll answer the question, but there was I'm pretty certain it was in the UK, it was a sausage manufacturer. And there was a supply chain breach, and the company that built the little cardboard trays that the sausages sit on, they couldn't produce them, which meant the knock-on effect was the guy producing the sausages, the company, couldn't sell them. So, it's an age-old question of how and why. And I think if you have major suppliers of components that are part of your product or your production, then I think you have every right to ask them the question of how are you securing it, and how are you securing your production lines, what regulatory compliances are you adhering to, and holding their feet to the fire to make sure that they follow the same suit that you're following, because the impacts, for them and you there's financial implications potentially. So I don't know whether there's anyone wants to add anything.
I'd say that quickly, a lot of this quickly spirals into being huge amounts of work, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
You have quickly found you've got hundreds or thousands of devices, hundreds or thousands of vulnerabilities, hundreds of suppliers potentially going through those kind of supplier questionnaires and understanding where the people giving the answers even really know is difficult. So then you're back to just some of the basics of being very careful what kinds of files how are files being exchanged, or how is data being exchanged between the organisations? Have any side shoots been put in place where people are now emailing files with attachments with data in, but you could have executables in and those sorts of things. So then you're back to just basic cyber security as well, unfortunately.
There is a push down. We work in the defence sector. If you don't comply with the things, if you're going to pass that information to someone else in your supply chain, they need to apply with those things. So I think that's just going to become more of the norm, isn't it? I believe. We're preparing ourselves for that work for defence. I think we'll just naturally, over the next 5 or 10 years, will be what everyone asks for.
Just standards.
Forgive me. Please first. I think to that point, I think there's a slight nuance as well in terms of the organisations. I think there are some more sensitive aspects of your manufacturing for defence or anything else that you need to draw out, and I think that is really, really crucial to kind of consider. But I think depending on your industry and what you're doing, I think you'll want to almost not tolerate the risk, but actually kind of just use that risk effectively in the right way. And I think for me, obviously you can't take that risk in a defence sector, but you might be able to take more of a risk in another area or another kind of manufacturing line. And I think there's a nuance, and I think it's very context specific to that point.
Sorry, I was just going to say that supply chain in manufacturing is one of the most complex areas of the industry. There are no easy answers to that question, but I would say that is one of the reasons that one should always gravitate towards buy, not build, pre-validated solutions, gravitating towards vendors with the broadest range of partnerships, who can actually bring the industry partners together and create a secure by default platform. But the reality is that you could be doing all the right things and still be vulnerable to supply chain attacks. The SolarWind situation is a great example of that, which is why I kind of revert back to my initial point, is that we have to always start from the worst case scenario that you mentioned earlier as well, is that do I have a pathway to recovery if I'm subjected to a destructive cyber event? That should be our starting point, particularly in today's geopolitical environment in which we find ourselves.
Well, just interesting to see, that tick box exercise that everybody's always sending off to suppliers, right? Bearing in mind at Microsoft, we get a lot of those. You're right, it's not, that doesn't really help understand the supply chain risk for an organization. I think that's why regulations are a good thing, right?
And
because they help. And standards, yeah.
Standards, absolutely. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Lauren, should we take another question?
How can manufacturers balance the need for increased productivity with the necessity of maintaining strong cybersecurity measures?
I've accepted as a SME, actually, I thought it was a burden initially, but I think I actually make the business more efficient and stronger in the long term. Because when we've started going through part of Cyber Essentials, you have to understand everything about, the software. Why have we got 6 versions of that software? Why have we got 3 versions to unzip things? Just because it happened and things would just happen and break. Now we're preventing that breaking. So we're having to do loads of work up front, and the IT department are pulling their hair out and looking a bit sad. But ultimately they do know that it will be better. We're doing, like with a lot of things, we're doing more planning, which then means less doing and more effective doing.
Yeah. It's a lot like the journey that quality went on.
Yeah.
In the 80s and 90s, quality was an expensive overhead, and then everyone realised it was actually the route to productivity and profitability. And I think this and sustainability are on that same journey.
Right.
But whether you get there depends how you go about it.
The perspective that we take is that security and delivering better security outcomes in your organization is actually a catalyst for innovation rather than a barrier to transformation. If you think about security as an afterthought, then yes, it's going to create friction in the way that you do everything. But in this digital economy that we are in at the moment, it's imperative that we deliver those platforms for accelerating innovation, and those platforms have to be intrinsically secure. Security needs to be, by design, as an architectural principle, intrinsically built into the platforms that you're deploying within your environment. So if you approach it from that angle, it won't be, as you quite early said, it won't be seen as a barrier. It would be actually seen as an enabler.
Just to that point there, you mentioned right at the end, security as an enabler. I think very much so. It allows you to almost turn over some of the rocks within your business that exist already. And I go back to the kind of quality example, I think, with on the manufacturing floor, very much when you're trying to get the vehicle off the end of the line, you've got quality checks all the way through, and security itself is a way of you doing some of those quality checks all the way through your own kind of infrastructure, whether it's IT or OT. It allows you to do that. I think very much that's where I think you can leverage it as an organisation.
I said in the last panel, it's for SMEs in particular, it'd be nice if it was just, you need to do this. There's a standard like cybersecurity, that different levels of that, and then all of these massive tier one suppliers went, yeah, we're happy with that, rather than, oh, we've come up with this new massive thing you've got to fill out. And for an SME, it's like, I'm not again, and I don't really know the answers to the questions. It's a bit too hard. I need to get the order, so I'll just say yes. And that's what lots of SMEs do. And it's a high risk strategy where if there was a really well thought about, I'm not saying Cyber Essentials is a bad thing, but that sort of structured approach where everyone could agree, this is what we've got to do. And there's a sort of like a score. All right, you're a 80 or would be nice.
In fact, let me ask you from the SME perspective, do you even have the resource to turn over rocks?
Yeah, because I'm interested. Our business is 35 years old. I've got 2 young children. One of them shows an interest potentially in manufacturing. Yeah, we've got loads of really amazing young people in the business that want to turn over rocks and ask what seems like a stupid question that's definitely not a stupid question. So, but yeah, the vast majority of SMEs are very busy doing, making the thing, but not always the time. And that's why I think sometimes these large companies think they're doing due diligence. Oh yes, we've sent a form out, but all the supplier's gone is, I really need the order, tick, 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 tick. What's that really proved? Absolutely nothing. And then they're no safer, but someone in compliance has gone, oh yeah, great.
Right. So far we've established it's the very reason we need that citadel. We need that minimum operating requirement to alleviate issues that may arise when that's happened.
Yeah.
Interesting. Lauren, what else have we got for us, please?
On the theme of SMEs, someone said, as an SME, this sounds very complex and very expensive. In terms of simple and affordable first steps, what should I do? Can I rely on all my cloud-based services being secure?
Arash.
The cloud bit is interesting. So we embrace the hyperscalers. Microsoft, one of our key partners. They are absolutely essential to accelerating innovation. But I do come across IT and business decision makers who think that if I move my assets to the cloud, I'll be more secure. There are others who feel that if too much has gone to the cloud, if I bring them back on premises, I can be in control. And the reality is that both views can be incorrect, because if your applications and your front-facing services are not secure by default, it doesn't really matter where you're running these applications, and your vulnerabilities stay the same. So there are some basic things that every organization can do to improve their cyber hygiene. appropriate application of encryption technologies, reducing the access levels, so only have access to the systems that you actually need to have access to, microsegmenting the environment to prevent lateral movement of bad actors within your organization, and multi-factor authentication wherever you've got human system interaction. I mean, if you think about the colonial pipeline attack, it wasn't a particularly sophisticated attack. So for those of you who don't know about the colonial pipeline, it's the network of oil pipeline that is responsible for distributing energy to the eastern seaboard of the United States. And a former employee's username and password was on the dark web. There was no multi-factor authentication. So the bad actors simply locked into the billing system and destroyed everything. They couldn't measure what was coming in, what was going out. And the most powerful economy in the world was within days of running out of diesel. So you can imagine what the implications of that would have been if that attack was not recovered from within that 3-day period. And the last piece is lifecycle management of your resources, appropriate levels of patching and updating and automating that whole piece, which is again why we would recommend you step away from building your own environments and moving towards pre-validated solutions that are available from vendors that have a broad ecosystem of partnerships that can deliver the outcomes that your businesses need.
And that by default, a part of Cyber Essentials is everything has to be patched very quickly. And then you find, oh, I've got this bit of software, I can't find a patch for it. It's probably quite a bit of crap software. It's not been updated for ages. So it sort of helps you clear out, like it does cause a bit of friction in the business because people are like, I really like that. And you're like, but it's not secure, it's not patchable. And then you find a actually much better solution. So it's this sort of turning over the rock thing again. It cleanses the business. That wasn't the intention of doing it, but it created that, out of the back end of it, which I've found quite powerful in the business.
I think it takes me back to the, in the question, there's the phrase, it's a lot of work. How do I secure all of my? I think the all of my is key, right? Complexity just grows by itself. People, they've gone for this platform, that platform, and so on, or the various solutions. We've talked a lot today about platforms and ecosystems. They're actually a huge enabler because they come with your data's in one place. There's one thing to manage, it's one set of security, one supplier, and so on. And so trying to constantly manage down that complexity that's always growing. That says, okay, 5 years ago, last time we did this, we needed this product to do virus scanning, and this one for device encryption, and this one for document sensitivity. Now there's one product that will do all of it. And eliminate all those. So that constant simplification and standardization is really important as well. And it's part of lifecycle management, but it's part of that renewal and just simplifying your estate. And that would apply across IT, OT, everything. I mean, the number of technologies, vendors, devices you're having to manage is difficult, and the complexity makes automation difficult as well. So everything points towards simplifying and standardizing.
Completely agree. Complexity is a number one challenge to delivering positive security outcomes in any environment. And a lot of that complexity is driven by proliferation of software, proliferation of digital assets. You're absolutely right. You need to constantly prune your environment. And quite frankly, look at your suppliers. Is there a case for making rationalization in terms of your vendor relationships, which is something that we tend to see across every industry because for that reason of delivering better security outcomes and reducing complexity.
Then to build on the points there, I think the complexity is two-faceted as well. So you've got this kind of legacy estate that you're going to be dealing with today, but you've also got to think about what you're doing about the future, and yet you've got to kind of almost separate those a little bit and start to think, right, okay, so in the past we've got this huge debt that we know about, or we're going to find out about in terms of asset management. But I think in terms of the new assets and systems and techniques you're going to build on top of that, you just need to be very careful about what you're going to do to put standards on those, and that's when the kind of compliance comes in. Looking at it, where do I want to have compliance, and what do I want as my standard, and then go from there. And then you're not shipping almost technical security debt into the organisation, And then you can, like, with that new equipment, you can start applying some of these platforms, IAM and everything else, with a kind of like almost a greenfield view. But yeah, I think there's loads of options around it.
Just speaking to that SME, it seems complicated, but I'm just thinking about another thing that happened in the business where legacy computers. So we need to replace that computer because that operating system isn't properly supported. So you change it, and then because it's not something that's used continuously, and the guy then speaks to me when I'm in the factory and says, "Oh, it's great. I can do my job in half the time now because I've got a new computer." But we thought, oh, he didn't spend that much time on the computer. But he's like, "No, it's about an hour a day." It's like a £500 workstation is like the best investment in the world. There's all these things that sort of drip out the bottom of it that are. It seems like a big thing. It is a big thing, but it has lots of benefits.
Fantastic. So whoever posed that question, I hope that's addressed that for you sufficiently. If not, I'm sure it's one that Lauren will be able to pick up on again with the podcast forthcoming. Talking of Lauren, have we got another question for our panel, please?
We have. This is quite an interesting one. So someone said, the most weak link in the manufacturing value chain are the humans. How can manufacturers ensure that with an ageing workforce, non-digital natives can become the strongest link?
I have to say, I'm really proud, Dave. Do you know that XKCD cartoon, which is Dave in the corner? We've got all of these security controls, and it's all Dave's fault when it goes wrong, right? I do think humans have a part to play. I don't think we should be blaming them if we can't get to the point where actually the security needs to be fairly transparent out of the box, right? If I click on a link and a weaponized PowerShell is dropped, for example, from Outlook.exe, we already know that's bad, right? We do something about that. So we sandbox the link because I think oftentimes we see perhaps the unintended side effects of trying to train people not to use things or click on hyperlinks, for example. So they just won't, right? They sit on their hands, they'd rather not do something that potentially exposes the business to a security problem. Instead of, let's get the technology, because you're completely right, whoever said people processing technology, that's where it should start. And of course, as a technologist, we tend to talk about technology very quickly. Rightly so, because technology, I think, plays a part in terms of automating humans out of the loop where it makes sense to have them out of the loop, making sure that we keep humans in the loop when it makes sense to have humans in the loop. For example, if it's a safety system, then we keep humans in the loop because we don't want to be isolating that. But I really would like the technology and the platforms to get to the point where we don't have to keep trying to train humans to be security professionals, because I don't think that's necessarily the right approach either.
I completely agree. I think the time has come for software developers not to develop software for software developers. I think it needs to be a human-centric, we need to have a human-centric approach. Having said that, I think an education and enablement strategy still is unfortunately required, and there needs to be some frameworks built around it to reduce the risk, because particularly on the smart manufacturing floor, where you don't necessarily have knowledge workers, they're more interested in building things. And we need to get to a point where they understand the risk of not operating the technology correctly and making them aware of that risk and the impact of the wrong decisions being made, I think needs to be known to them. But I don't think we should be treating humans as the weakest link.
And not to say that we don't educate them, because they're either the first or last line of defense, depending on which way you are and you want to do it. But just trying to hammer home the cybersecurity thing, I think, is the wrong way of doing it.
But it's making it secure but easy. Like, some of my staff are amazing builders, but they struggle to remember a 16-character, password, or 12. I can't remember what the rule is.
No more passwords.
But yeah, and it's just like thinking. So I said to I said we need it to like use facial recognition and maybe a card. It's still, because we can't have two-factor via a phone, because you can't have phones on the shop floor that can take pictures because of other security things that we need to do. So it's about, like you say, it's making it more human. Yeah, that's great. Having two-factor on your phone, having a really long password, that's great for an IT person, but not for Joe, who's really good at building stuff. We need to make it right for them as such.
which comes back to the earlier point about not making it for software developers.
Yes.
Absolutely. Matt, you've been nodding vigorously at this end.
Yeah, I'm sort of thinking another way, going down the secure access route. And I was thinking about Dave in the corner, retiring Dave, but poor old Dave, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm just trying to piece together in my head whether, if there is a concern around people maybe inadvertently causing issues in the production line or whatever the concern is there, of using a tool like secure access, so you can place them on a workstation, control via the secure access mechanism what they can touch, what they can't touch on a timed basis, and the secure access portal itself would do away with all the two-factor authentication because it's all pre-built in, administered from an authorized by an administrator on the back end. So there are many ways to answer that question, but then it's adding more technology to the mix. So I was sort of nodding and trying to work out the best sort of approach for that. But I think one approach would be is the secure access. Control what they can do, when they can do it, how they can do it, whether it's an employee, a third party, an OEM, a partner, and record what they're doing and have a full playback facility so that, if something does go wrong, you can go back, watch the recording and say, they clicked the wrong button there, let's go back and undo that and fix whatever has been broken maliciously or inadvertently.
Great. Thank you. Lauren, time for another question at least.
So someone's asked, how can manufacturers ensure compliance with government legislations, particularly those aimed at protecting environments that underpin national security and public safety?
Leslie.
Oh, good. I looked at you. I was listening quick. So critical national infrastructure, I think, is a really complicated conversation because, it ranges from the very small entities down here to really quite large organizations, and there's a very many different maturity from a cyber resilience, cybersecurity perspective. I think the cyber essentials we've mentioned a couple of times now, I think that's a minimum starting point for where we need to get to. I also think, big tech, such as Microsoft, has a duty of care to think about how we help in those situations, because genuinely it takes a village to try and sort this out. Also, given the current geopolitical environment that you mentioned, we see these people genuinely going after critical national infrastructure now, and that's a concern for all of us from a society perspective. So I think governments, regulations, I think we see something like 280 regulations per day as a global organization. So we have to work quite closely with the regulators to try and help make sure that we're harmonizing those regulations. Otherwise, it's just keep getting hit by different regulations all the time. But then, as I say, just working in collective defense to try and help society as a whole, because I think if we don't do that from that collective defense perspective, we very quickly get overwhelmed.
I echo Leslie's views. However, I would add that, yes, it is everyone's responsibility to adhere to regulatory standards, but manufacturers, particularly SMEs, shouldn't feel that they're on their own. Because again, as you mentioned, the onus and the duty of care is on vendors like us to deliver solutions that are compliant from the start. And we have the resources to keep up with this complex regulatory landscape and to align our solutions and capabilities to ensure that at the point of deployment, you are compliant with the regulatory standards that are required.
Yeah.
And I think just on compliance for the means, because there's obviously new compliance that's coming in all the time. And it's this moving target as well in terms of what you're trying to aim towards. I think I see it more as like conformance to a standard as opposed to compliance to a standard. And I think one of the areas I think that you can use vendors, advisors, OEMs, and everything else is to give you that advice and give you that kind of like that platform. These are the areas that we already comply to. You don't need to worry too much about it. But I think for me, it's when it comes down to actually what are the actions that you need to take from the kind of SME perspective. What action do I actually need to take? Who do I initially need to report some of this to? And NIS2 regulations at the moment are really pushing on who do you report to. You've got European operations. I think that's really critical. And that may come into the UK, but I think you're always pushing the boundaries, and I think you're just trying to get better and use those kind of almost that ecosystem and that collaboration you've got and the people you've got beside you to help you. So that's really, really key.
I was trying not to use the shared responsibility model phrase.
For an SME, is there a need, this is sort of like a bit of a question, is there a need for a label or a qualification so we knew, right, oh, is it compliant? Oh, yeah, we can use that software, rather than us going, right, so we've got to do the research, we've got to do our due diligence on a thing. You know, I'm not one for loads of regulation, but should there be a, like, oh, right, no, that's, I don't want to hamper innovation by slowing things down, but is there a need for some sort of qualification so that people then know, right, yeah, that's fine, I can use that, and it's going to be up to date and it's checked and it's secure, and I don't have to do all my own research, which SMEs don't have the capability or capacity to do.
There's a need for it, but whether there is a will to do it consistently across the industry without any government interference, I would question that.
Interesting. I know we're getting a little low on time, so I might have to ask you, we're going to take another question, but if we can keep our answers really concise, please, that would be fantastic. Lauren, what have you got for us?
Yeah, so this is last one that's come through, actually. So when can we expect security to be a necessary impact KPI, like many of the things that manufacturing organisations measure, emissions, time to market, right first time, etc.?
There we are, a necessary impact KPI. What do we think?
Now.
Security is already a board level priority for almost every organisation I come in contact with. So I would say now.
I think it's now. The question is, what's the KPI? I don't. You know, for something like health and safety, there are fairly well established metrics that are used. I think for cybersecurity, not so much. You know, we need to find some that are sufficiently representative, and they'll never be comprehensive, but sufficiently representative, you know, to be both understood by the board and other people with the authority to make change and the accountability, but also they're meaningful. Right? So I think those KPIs are still emerging.
To that point on KPIs, I think as well, you've got to look at what that business is actually there to do. So if you're a manufacturer and you're thinking about volume, you know, at the end of it, you know, you've got to link the security KPIs to that high level logic tree of that particular organisation. I think for me as well, I think if you have a particular KPI or get a series of KPIs, it's far better for you to have those than have nothing at all, because at least you're aiming towards something. I think I've seen a lot of organisations, our clients, who don't really have any measures or anything else of how they're improving that security in place at the moment, or even kind of real roles that they've got in place to take those forward. So I think that there's a lot of challenges there, I think, particularly.
Anything to add to that, Matt?
Yeah, KPIs is an interesting one. I think from a business, the risk appetite of any organisation, the bar needs to be set at a specific level. And how you do that is up to the individual organisation, whether it is the asset inventory, whether it's understanding if there's financial implications of if factories, if you stop producing and, you know, there's cost implications with that. You could measure another KPI of there are some custodial sensitives for C-level executives if certain regulatory compliances are not adhered to. So again, that could be another measurement or threshold there to really look at. So I think it's very hard to define, but I think it's very organisationally, it's an organisationally specific level, acceptance level. I think it's difficult, but certainly with the right, many discussions along here today of the right tooling, the right education, the right ecosystem, the right partnership with different vendors can help organisations to understand where do we draw the line in the sand, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what's going to keep our organisation running tomorrow, what's going to make us profitable, what's going to stop my CISO staying out of prison, for example. There's many things to consider, but I think the grasp here, the real thing is what do I have to protect and what's the associated risk with that, and then go from there.
I just saying to what Mark was saying about volume, depending on what you're making, the criticality of the information wrapped around what you're making. If you're knocking out IKEA wardrobes compared to some of the work that we do, where we need to know what welder welded, which welder, what welding wire, which gas, what material. Otherwise, the product is worthless because the data pack that goes with the product is it's half of the value of the job. You understand the level of what you need, isn't it? And then there's certain jobs we do where they couldn't care what material you made out of it. As long as it's black, that'll be fine. So I think it's choosing the right path for the right product and the right business. But I think all SMEs are slowly realising this could be disastrous, whatever you do. You can't pay your employees. From my point of view, it's those people that do the making. That would be the worst case scenario.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you all so much. I'm just going to ask our panellists to remain seated for a moment. We are, of course, about to go into another break. A reminder to you all, we're going to be starting back here promptly in just over 20 minutes' time. So just before we do, can I ask you please to show your appreciation to our panellists, to Matt, Mark, Leslie, Patrick, Arash, Will, and our moderator, Lauren. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you back here in 20 minutes' time.
I can feel something inside me say I really don't think it's strong enough now. Do you believe in love after love? I can feel something inside me say I really don't think it's strong enough now. gonna die. Well, like diamonds in the sky. You're a shooting star, I see a vision of ecstasy. When you hold me, I'm alive. Well, like diamonds in the sky. At first sight, I feel the energy of sun rays. I saw the light inside your eyes.
Tonight, you and I, we're beautiful like diamonds in the sky. I do, so alive. We're beautiful like diamonds in the sky.
Well, sometimes I go out by myself and I look across the water. And I think of all the things and what you're doing. In my head, I bring a picture. Since I come home, well, my body's been a mess. And I miss your ginger hair and the way you like to dress. Won't you come over? So I'm making a fool out of me. Why don't you come on over, Did you have to go to jail? Put your house up for sale? Did you get a good lawyer? I hope you did and catch your 10. Hope you find the right man who fix it for you. Are you shopping anywhere? You change the color of your hair. Are you busy? And did you have to pay that fine? Did you indulge all the time? Are you still dizzy? Since I've come home, well, my body's been a mess. And I miss your ginger hair and the way you like to dress. Won't you come on over? So making a fool out of me. Why don't you come on over, Well, sometimes I go out by myself and I look across the water. And I think of all the things and what you're doing. In my head, I'll bring a picture. Since I've come home, well, my body's been a mess. And I miss your ginger hair and the way you like to dress. Won't you come over? So I'm making a fool out of me. Why don't you come on over, baby? And the land is dark, and the moon is the only light we'll see. No, I won't be afraid. No, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me. So darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Please stand by me. Stand by me. If the sky that we look upon should tumble and fall, oh, the mountain should crumble to the sea, I will cry.
This is your final call to join us in the auditorium to harness the power of the industrial metaverse.
Well, he said it for me. When he hasn't finished. There we go. Welcome back, everyone. There you go. He said it all for me. Welcome back to the final segment, indeed, of the day. We have two more presentations and another panel discussion yet to come. And with that, let us crack straight on then and invite our next speaker to the stage. The next presentation is, as you heard from the voice of God out there, entitled Harnessing the Power of the Industrial Metaverse. As our speaker will cover, how do immersive virtual environments, AI and digital twins produce operational efficiencies? Well, here to tell us more then, let's welcome to the stage the Director of Industry Solutions at SoftServe, Scott Kemp.
Okay, mic's working? Perfect. Nice to meet everyone. Scott from Scotland. It's quite an easy one. I think my parents got bored after the third kid. I work for SoftServe. I'll give you a very brief introduction to SoftServe. We're a 31-year-old IT consultancy organization, 11,000 people, originating out of the universities of Ukraine, still a large presence in Eastern Europe, but now headquartered in Austin. The reason I think we're here today is primarily due to the relationship and the work that we've been doing with NVIDIA. We were awarded the NVIDIA Partner of the Year award this year. And I'll give you a glimpse in this presentation as to, and I don't like to take it from a technology perspective. I come from manufacturing and I don't want to talk about technologies. I will address technologies, but I'll try to jump as quick as I can to how do you use these technologies and what results can they bring to you, especially from a manufacturing operations perspective. So, I mean, as manufacturers, we have this problem statement. We're trying to get goods and materials from sourcing through to our customers as effectively as we possibly can. But to do that, and to do that with the KPIs that we're being judged against, we've got to hit our safety standards, we've got to hit delivery, we've got to do this sustainably, we've got to do this with quality. There's a lot of things now that we're being pushed to achieve from a manufacturing perspective. But in between that, with this digital world, we've got to get data from those systems, collate it together, bring it up into the clouds, into our infrastructure. Digital twins then become this representation of your operations, which then become this analysis of actually how do you view and measure, and what gets measured gets managed in operations. And then now with AI coming to fruition and really coming into the forefront of everyone's minds, how can you really adopt it and get change the narrative of how you operate? How do you become more predictive and prescriptive? And this is where AI offers up opportunities to change the way that you fundamentally behave in operations, which is quite cool. So we'll talk a bit about how this ties into the world industrial metaverse. I don't necessarily love the term industrial metaverse. Everyone has their own opinions, right? Let's talk about digital twins. Digital twins, I think, are self-explanatory. A digital representation of your physical assets. But what does that really mean? And I've stolen the term cradle to grave from ESG reporting teams. Really taking something, your product, machine life cycles. How do you deploy machines? How do you run them properly? And then how do you actually close them off properly? And this is where the industrial metaverse digital twins start to help to aid you throughout the life cycle of what you're doing with your equipment, with your facilities. And it can start off from, how do you commission, how do you get machines designed properly, installed properly, up and running as quick as possible, operate your operations in the most kind of efficient and effective way, optimizing using AI models, and then finally be able to kind of collaborate and work and automate within that environment too. And this is the life cycle that we're trying to drive through. But a digital twin really becomes interesting when you start to augment and layer up the technologies such as AI, different types of AI, whether it be AI, ML predictive models, or it might be generative AI. And how do you bring those into the digital twin environment? And this is like what we talked about earlier, Andy talked about earlier with NVIDIA, is that omniverse environment helping you to tie all these different components, live data, models, etc., into one environment, which you can start to play with. So we play a lot with bringing AI, AR, VR, simulations, metaverse. We talked about security in the last session. How do you bring this into the environment with your digital twin? And this is, I think, where the industrial metaverse starts to become quite interesting. And it's this progressional state that a lot of organizations are going through, and quite frankly, a lot of manufacturers are still in the infancies of achieving this. And they're achieving it within silos or spotlights of different areas of their operations. It might be on certain pieces of equipment, it might be in supply chain, but we're all pushing towards, I mean, the plan is to get to this adaptive state. But I'd say a lot of us, we're still kind of getting our data into one place, and that's the digital twin environment. But being able to enable that predictive capability, so we're not firefighting in operations, we're starting to run and look into the future so that we're getting ahead of our challenges. And then it becomes, then how does AI actually understand the context of what is wrong with your operations, and then make prescriptions or intelligent prescriptions to the people that are actually carrying out those tasks. And then finally, once you have all of that operating within that kind of digital twin environment, the industrial metaverse space, how can those systems actually start to play together? How can robotics start to play with other systems available to it? And this is where we're progressing. And this environment then helps us to do quite a lot of different things. We talked about predicting, optimizing, prescribing. Visualization becomes this kind of interface for your employees, your operators to be able to interact with the equipment. And then you're able to collaborate as well. So it's like actually going in a virtual environment and being able to test, play, simulate is quite an interesting thing. But then that's the human-to-machine collaboration, but then finally actually the machine-to-machine collaboration. So it's kind of the autonomy, which is where the industrial metaverse starts to become quite interesting, in that when you actually get machines to start to interact with each other. This is quite sci-fi, superficial stuff, quite crazy stuff, but it is reality today. So where as we are operators, we now move away from technology and talk about where this stuff can actually be applied. Why and how does this bring value to us? A lot of the areas can be, how do we do a simulation first approach? And simulation first really is about looking at how you can remove the physical experimentation required to install equipment. How can you design a virtual machine, test it out, see how it works, play with it, optimize it, change the things, and keep that cycle going faster, which enables you to deploy much quicker. It enables you to optimize much faster. It enables you to get up to speed in operations much quicker. And we're seeing that in our operations, and when we're doing this with customers, it's saving us about 30% during the actual deployment, which is resulting in about 30% savings. That is one element of where digital twins and that virtual environment are adding value. Here's a video which shows a bit of the work that we've done. And this really runs all the way through from customer interfacing through product lifecycle management. We're helping design and train things in virtual environments. And you'll see here a variety of different use cases, and I'll talk you through as they go through quickly, but I'll delve into some others later. You see here how we're teaching robotic systems and building production lines using Omniverse to be able to simulate not just the digital side of the production lines, but also have things physically interact. So in Omniverse, you can do the physical interactions. So materials, like how things hit into each other. You can see on this conveyor line, we're able to simulate how a box, if it was falling from one conveyor to another, might collapse or break. So you can design all of this into the production lines as you're building them. And then you can actually add the AI models into that environment, which then you can say, okay, how do I optimize routing paths, say in a warehouse system, or how do I optimize the settings of a machine? And that's where you're then doing a very fast, iterative digital process instead of building a physical machine. We're doing stuff in space. It's a bit wild. We're helping like NASA, et cetera, explore and dig and figure out how they can dig in space. We're doing stuff, fluid dynamics within packaging consistence. We're doing synthetic data generation for vision quality systems. So instead of training AI models for quality inspection with hundreds of defective products, we can train it with 2 images and then do 98% synthetic data training. So this is, again, enabling flexibility on when you do changeovers from one product to another product, so that as you change from one thing to another thing, you can quickly retrain your models, and then you can change over products very quickly, pulling in information from CAD designs, from real-time data, etc. And again, I mentioned like this is bringing results, and we're seeing these results. We're working with a large retailer at the moment to design and optimize their warehousing. And we're seeing then cost optimizations in the deployment phase of around 50%. And then we're actually able to optimize the throughput, the output of those warehouses by about 30%, or 20%, sorry. And this is the sort of savings that you can achieve by doing these trainings and plannings, etc., up front before going into a physical deployment, which can be very cost saving. In the robotics space, we are a software company. Our name is SoftServe, so it kind of is in the name. But we do have a physical robotics lab in Lviv, in Ukraine. And there we're doing really cool stuff. We're using Omniverse to tie in a variety of different data sources, CAD models, etc., to be able to train robotics. And using reinforcement learning within the Omniverse environment, we can train robotics on how to actually pick up things. If it doesn't pick it up and it falls, it then restarts and trains again. So until the system fully understands how it can dynamically pick up things and put them out into other places, which you can understand, then we're training the robotics on the fly. So that becomes very interesting, because then if you want to change on your production line from one product to another product, you can bring in that CAD model into the Omniverse environment, train it, and then actually deploy it into the production line. So that's where that becomes quite interesting. And you're moving away from then robotic systems at the moment being very kind of stagnant, fixed place movements, to having more vision systems and dynamic programming and reteaching of the robotic systems. To the point now where, again, we can bring in AI models into that environment, and we can actually now, in our lab, we're now using Gen AI to control the robotics. So we can say to the robotic system in code, or in text, sorry, pick up the red glass or pick up the blue glass, and it understands the context using the vision systems, and actually then goes and then does the instructions. So you understand how bringing this all into the same environment starts to enable new capabilities, and that's just the starting of it. I mentioned earlier about 3D scanning or quality inspection. We're using, again, the Omniverse environment to bring in our CAD model, and we can compare the CAD model to the scanned or visualized product, and we can compare them directly. We can see the variances between what was actually viewed from the production line to what was said to be done. And this then gives you a more dynamic capabilities in terms of scanning and understanding, well, if I'm running this from my MES system, I bring in this CAD model, I can understand what is happening. And again, that synthetic data generation allows us to do changeovers much quicker, and it's far more flexible. I think one of my favorite examples, though, and it was mentioned in one of the original presentations by Andy Hendry from NVIDIA, is an example which I think brings this all together very nicely. And this was the Industrial Gen AI Assistant, what we worked with Continental to build. So we went to Continental. They were interested to test out these new technologies. The problem statement, although we had managed to achieve a great result in terms of improving the OEE, the true problem statement they had was the aging workforce. They have a large amount of knowledge got lost from the organization that they were trying to address, and trying to find systems which would enable faster ramp up and training of their people was something they were trying to deal with. What we helped them do was, by reducing the mean time to repair and also reducing the amount of time to do changeovers on the line, we were able to bring together a large language model, the digital twin environment, so the high fidelity CAD model, pair them together. So as you speak to the chatbot, the large language model, you can ask questions of unstructured data, which is your SOP documentation. You can ask information from the MES systems. You can pull up, what is the production schedules, You can pull up other types of data. And through this, we were able to achieve, reduce the amount of time it took to execute different tasks. I'll give you a quick glimpse as to how that looks here. But we found that the visualization aspect, because the solution is not targeted at the engineers that have been doing this for 20, 30 years. They can do this with their hands behind their back and the blindfold on. This is targeted at the kind of younger, less experienced engineers to help them operate at the same capabilities. So the visualization aspect really adds a lot of value because it guides them and shows them where they need to go, what they need to press, and we can even bring imagery then from, say, the SOPs, as you see in the top right. So there's a fusion of all these different data sets that we're bringing together and then bringing that large language model into the same environment so that as a maintenance engineer, if you're going through that maintenance task, for example, when you get to the machine, you don't know what's happened to the machine. You might want to ask the IoT data, what has the vibration been over the past 2 days? You might want to understand what the temperature behavior has been over the past 2 days. You might want to bring in one of your predictive maintenance models and ask, what was the system saying? What could have been the reason for failure? So there's a variety of different data sets that you're trying to pull from. It could be who executed this maintenance task 2 weeks ago when it broke. Pulling all of this information together into one environment adds a lot of value to the people on the production floor who essentially just want to get their information faster and easier. And that's what we're enabling through a solution like this. As this video runs, I didn't finish off with a slide to say thank you, and I did a thank you one, but to say, okay, well, how to get started with this. So I'll just talk through that as the video continues. It's not as far-fetched as I think a lot of people think, and they think about Omniverse, they think about NVIDIA and say, okay, well, these are technologies that are not attainable. I think Andy Hendry spoke about it earlier, where it's built on kind of open source platform systems that can be adopted, and the costs of doing so aren't so astronomically high. What we find the key is to really understand what we're trying to solve, what's the problem. And if we refer back to this case study, the problem, although we're trying to improve the OEE percentage with the customer, the real problem is the knowledge loss. And we need to go in there and discuss that with the production teams, starting with the need and the visualization, for example, of the operators. That was, again, another key element or information that we extracted when we worked with them to understand what the need of the technology was. So that kind of iterative and close collaboration effort with the users was essential in getting us started and developing this solution and for the adoption rate. And that's the process we like to go through. The reason I work for SoftServe is I came from manufacturing. I understand enough of the technology, but understanding what the OT teams need is really the primary thing that we're trying to address. So we're very much pain point first and work our way back towards technology, even though we are an IT consultancy. But that was all from myself. Hopefully that gives you an insight into what we do, what we've done, the potential of Omniverse and NVIDIA, and bringing those AI models into those environments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. Lovely. Scott, thank you very much indeed. So while we're on the subject of the industrial metaverse, with the help of our next presenter, we're going to explore the incentives to invest in that concept with short and longer term perspectives. Presenting deriving value from the industrial metaverse or from the journey there, please welcome to the stage the digital transformation leader, UK&I at Schneider Electric, Francois Disch.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Mic working? Yep. So, all right. So, first slide for me. So, yeah. So, thank you very much. Here we go. So, I'm gonna follow up from Scott a lead on the industrial metaverse. So, the remit of this pack of this presentation that I'm gonna give to you today, it's really about how to get value out of the out of the concept or out of the journey to there. So Scott showed us a few use cases. I must admit, I don't have so shiny examples to give you today, but I'm going to give you some other things which are more tips. Because, as I was introduced, I am the lead industrial digital transformation consultant for Schneider Electric in the UK and on Ireland. And I'm a very practical guy, right? So usually my clients are asking me to come and help them to solve very concrete problems. And I don't have like a whole range of fancy solution to give them right away, because I need to solve the problems here and now. So I've got a portfolio of solutions. So I represent here Schneider, but as well Aviva. So hopefully you know what Aviva is. It's not an insurance company. It's the largest industrial software company in the world, or it was until Schneider bought it a year and a bit ago. So Wonderware might recall some, be giving a bit of a clue. Schneider Electric, who bought Aviva actually last year as well, or 2 years ago, bought OSI Pi, if it rings a bell. So we're quite a large company. So I've got some solutions to provide. Obviously, I'm going to talk about them. What did you expect from me? But I'm going to try to place them into this story, which is the industrial metaverse. So coming back to what exactly I do, I go to factories, I assess them, and then I devise my end customers, end users, sorry, of my software, what they should do. And if we go to the next slide, I could actually take the clicker. Thank you. I don't have a lot of time to bring value. It's probably a couple of years. If we take the Schneider Electric standards, this is the maximum time that we are allowing for ourselves, for our own digital transformation, to bring technology on the shop floor and get value out of it, for it to pay for itself. Less than 2 years. And sometimes I'm even asked to get the money back in 1 year. Good luck. So who can relate to this kind of timelines? By show of hands in the room? Yeah. As well, by a show of hands, who is more on the end user side of things? Yeah, thank you. Who is more into the enabling side, more like SIs or the channels to bring those technologies? Okay. All right, so I'm going to try to put myself in the shoes of both, but probably with the inclination of the SMEs and the SIs who are going to try to push this agenda forward and give you tips about what to do. And from the end user side, it would be more, well, actually being what to expect from the SIs in terms of knowledge about the metaverse and on the enabling blocks for it. So when I've been asked to come and work on this presentation, I was like a little bit cautious, if not a little bit skeptical. The metaverse didn't have a lot of good press, especially since the big flop that there's nobody from Meta here, right? When Facebook transformed itself, called itself Meta, and make a metaverse that was not very much visited, right? But some more clever people than me said interesting things. If we keep doing the way the things we do, we're not going to solve the problems that we created for ourselves. And one of the problems that we created for ourselves, and I'm echoing from quite a few presentations which have been given today, are linked to complexity. So today, we are making things more complicated because this is the next edge. Because we are asked to do more and more and more, and we are asked to bring things together to have to bring to the next level of complexity in the next level of integration in our projects, right? So some some companies manage to fly airplanes with 500 passengers over two floors. This is no mean feat. Some other companies are trying to build nuclear power plants of 1.7 gigawatt. You've got 5 or 6 projects running at any one time, and none of them work correctly. A few in China, but I've heard that there are some surprises every now and then there. So not everybody is able to manage complexity. Maybe the metaverse is going to help us, right? I'm not saying that this is the answer, but I'm saying maybe we should have a quick look. So that's what motivated me to do this this presentation. So now I'm suggesting to wrap up what we've heard today in a few sentences. I was hoping to get them displayed one by one, but let's go through them. Just to hope to get our thoughts together and figure out where we are right now with the metaverse, and figure out what we could expect just next. So first, it's not about semantics. We probably don't care whether it's an existing universe, if it's a parallel, it needs to be one or many, if we need to figure out what is consumer, what is industrial. The metaverse is a concept that is not fully come to fruition, maybe not completely, and it's gonna come, we're gonna get to it eventually. What is sure is that we're gonna get there. Unlike the consumer version, the industrial metaverse is anchored into reality. We have IoT sensors who are going to bring digital twin anchored into the existing physical asset into the virtual world. We're going to do something there, whatever it is, bring back the outcomes to reality and get some value out of this. So it's not a completely fake world. But a commonality with the consumer metaverse, that it is human-centric. We want the humans to be at the center of the collaboration, which is going to be promoted by this concept. So yes, we're going to extend it to what you were saying a little bit before, that it's machine-to-machine communications, but we've got a human component so that people can see what does not exist, so that they can get that feeling and that feedback loop for humans who are involved in the process. It is based on interoperability and will enable collaboration. Those humans, us, the engineers, the consultants, the designers, are going to react to this to what is in the metaverse. It is agnostic from the interface device. The interface device could be a headset, VR headset, or this is what the consumer metaverse is more about. But for us in the industrial metaverse, it's going to be more on screens, laptops, PCs, doesn't matter. It needs to be agnostic. And whether or not it exists already, the components do exist. We've got IoT, edge computing. We had a very nice presentation this morning by our Dell colleague. We've got AI. We've got digital twin, what Scott presented us with. We've got other elements which were presented this morning by NVIDIA. It all comes together. And those use cases nowadays already bring value. The metaverse itself, maybe not, but those constitutive elements do bring value. And then I do think that there are still some hurdles which remain to be solved. And if you ever want to ask questions at the end, I've got a few for you. So we've got the data privacy, ownership on usage rights, integration, interoperability. We've got the security. We were talking about it just during the previous panel on the presentations. The trust in models. If you are going to build models, infer some outcomes out of it, so infer some conclusions from running simulations online. How do you trust that model that you put together is actually spitting out the right kind of reactions to the stimuli you give it? And last but not least, who's going to pay for it? We had NVIDIA a little bit earlier today, and I'd be curious to have some of the answers here. Who's going to host the whole metaverse for everybody to enjoy and use and pay for actually the computing power behind it, or the hosting of any sort, to run it so that we can run our simulations? So how does it become a Web 3.0 kind of concept, or is it associated to it? So that's the summary of where it's at, I think, today. So coming back on all those constitutive elements, I will have actually examples to give for each of them. When we're talking about getting value out of the metaverse, I don't think we're necessarily going to get value out of the whole concepts right away, but we're going to have many examples of all the constitutive elements that are coming there. So I've put logos of companies that I can openly share. We've got some more, but just running through it. IoT and edge computing. Xsys is a manufacturer of printers, big printers for posters and books, industrial printing. We enabled them with our suite of EcoStruxure suite of software to completely digitalize their printer and be able to help remoting into those assets and enable maintenance support. This led to a 50% reduction in the maintenance support fees that the Xsys had to charge their own customers. So this is bringing value, reducing cost on one side, which is directly impacting the bottom line of the clients who are using these solutions. Is it metaverse? No. Is it a constitutive element? I'd say yes. It's one brick. Coming to digital twins and collaboration. Acre carbon capture, we're building like storage facilities for CO2. They are using the unified engineering software from Aviva. This unified engineering software helps to bring all the CAD drawings, electrical drawings, all the engineering from front-end engineering design and starting to get into operations in a single place. It gives you the 3D rendering that helps you figure out where the clashes are, going onto the site and so on. This helped them over a period of 10 years to reduce by 90% the engineering related to the design of those carbon capture sites, right? So significant. Is it the metaverse? No. Is it a constitutive element? Definitely yes. This is where we're going to go. Data hub centralization. So a big name, Kellogg's. Kellogg decided to go for Aviva Data Hub. So it's the old name of a couple of years ago, well, a year ago, of Aviva Connect now. It's the platform, the OT data platform that helps serve the OT data of your company outside, right? There's everything is made convenient to share this data, right? To make it securely and so on. Kellogg decided to go across all their sites and use the Aviva Connect. In one specific site, they used it to interact with their chocolate supplier. Out of this massive saving in a supply chain, we're talking about 3 million euros worth of savings in avoiding waste of chocolate and having the right chocolate at the right temperature and right quantities to code their serials. So, is it the metaverse? Not on its own, but certainly it is a constitutive part. Data, we talked about it a bit earlier. Data is the crucial one of the crucial elements to get the metaverse going. Artificial intelligence. So I'll use an example from our own company. So Schneider Electric managed to digitalize, capture all the data inside the monolithic supply chain that we've got, and applied machine learning on it, on stock quantities, lead times, transportation mode. Right? We got the Gartner Award in supply chain in 2022 on this, thanks to this initiative. We saved 100 million euros a year thanks to this optimization, because we went so far that we couldn't do much more than with the naked eye. We use machine learning to get to the next edge. Is it the metaverse? Not really. It's kind of pulling data here and there from the 35 different ERP systems. But the fact that we are applying AI at scale, this is one of the components that we need to expect. And the last one is UAO, or universal automation that Karishma was speaking about a little bit earlier in the breakout rooms at lunchtime. It's about an ecosystem to bring together a variety of vendors to collaborate on the way to use our industrial automation, right? So it's separating the hardware from the software, allowing several vendors to work on the same platform, right? Is it the metaverse? Not really, but it's one of the constitutive elements. So what I'm saying is that all of those various constitutive elements, and I'm not saying that they are quite mutually exhaustive or not overlapping between each other, but they are probably the main pillars. What I'm suggesting now is going through the list of the things that we as engineers or industrialists want to focus on. And this is when we are asked about whether the metaverse matters. This is the list of things that we probably need to focus on. Check the standards. As easy as opening Google and writing metaverse standards, there is a metaverse standard forum. Not everything is about the industrial metaverse, but quite a bit. And there's a lot of overlap with the consumer metaverse. There is an industrial metaverse interoperability work group, which I suggest to have a quick look at. Embrace ecosystems. As we were saying before, rather buy than make. Reinventing the wheel is something complicated. And there's a lot going on already. The beauty would be to actually manage to fit things together. Future-proof the tech for usage and at selection. Yes, due diligence on the technology that will enable the metaverse is worth having a quick look so that you place your bets on the right technologies. Inspect operations for collaboration frictions, because actually you don't need to create the metaverse for yourself, but what you can do is already check what are the use cases which are going to be enabled by the metaverse inside your own company to figure out whether or not this could bring value to you. Then structure your data. I'm out of time, but I've got 2 post-its right left. Structure your data, because if it's structured, you can export it, you can scale it, you can sell it, you can use it way more efficiently. And as we said before in the AI panel, AI depends on well-structured, well-organized data. Yeah. So this is one of the best advice. On the most important one, and I'll finish on this, is make any work you do, reusable, shareable, and compatible with all the previous elements. The metaverse is going to be about combining things together, bring them up into a virtual environment, and the goal is to copy paste. Don't be afraid of it. Combine with colleagues, with peers, and make them make systems which can work together and which you can reuse over and over again, making the savings and enabling collaboration while doing this. All right, that was me, François Dich from Schneider Electric.
Thank you. Fantastic. Thank you, Francois. And with that, then, we are heading into our final panel discussion of the day. And I'm glad Francois hasn't gone far, because I will need to invite back our previous speakers to take their seats. Into seat number 1, please, the Director of Industry Solutions at SoftServe, Scott Kemp. Next to him, the gentleman we just heard from, Francois, the Digital Transformation Delivery Leader, UK and I at Schneider Electric. Into seat 3, we've got Director, Executive Architect at KPMG, Neil Reardon. Into seat 4, the CTO for Automotive and Manufacturing at Microsoft, Paul Griffiths, no relation of mine, as far as I'm aware. Into seat 5, MTC's own Associate Director of Digital Manufacturing, that's Nandini Chakravorty. And once again, our SME representative, the MD of Warren Services, Will Bridgman, occupying the 7th seat, as she has done all day in the other panel discussions. Please welcome back as well Lauren, who is going to be running the Industry Today podcast, coming very soon. So the final panel then, and we can see then we haven't got much on the clock, so we will get cracking. Now, I've got 2 pre-planned questions, actually, which I wanted to address to the 2 speakers we just heard from. I'm going to start with you, Scott, if that's okay. I'm just going to ask you then, how do immersive virtual environments, AI, and digital twins specifically contribute to operational efficiencies in manufacturing, logistics, and engineering?
Yeah, great question. I think I addressed quite a few of those points within the presentation. I'll probably just hit the kind of core points. I think within operations, we're typically reactive, where we start to bring AI models, etc., into digital environments or using it on the data that we have available. We can look through historical data and actually then look into the future and start to get ahead of our problems within supply chain, within manufacturing, within a variety of areas. And once we've made those predictions, we can then optimize the result or potential result. And then through codifying of what was done in the past, we can then finally prescribe then actions to people. So we're aiding teams or people to take the right decision that provides the most optimal result. And doing that within that digital environment is kind of the key point that I was trying to get across in my presentation.
And I think you did, by the way. So
Thank you very
much.
Good.
Now, just before I ask Francois his question, a reminder to you all, of course, that any questions you have here, or indeed our remote audience, if you have any questions, don't forget, please do go on to mtcevents.co.uk/question to post your questions. Lauren is busy moderating those right now. So, Francois, meanwhile, another question for you, if I may. Now, you probably, again, have addressed this in your presentation to a greater degree, but you mentioned that all of these long and short-term incentives we've got. Can you just remind us again, what are the key incentives for manufacturers to invest in the industrial metaverse?
So the incentives have to be getting value out of it right away, okay? So as I was saying, like the ROI less than 2 years, sometimes less than 1. So building a digital twin from scratch, depends on what you're doing. If it's a pen, it's probably okay. If it's a full factory like a BMW, it's gonna take some time, and they're probably not gonna hit the 2 years. But for the manufacturing plants that I'm assessing in the UK, and probably what you are dealing with day to day with your clients, I think we need to have this short-term incentive and building the knowledge, reaching the value bit by bit. That's how you eat an elephant, I heard, bit by bit. So the metaverse is an elephant, sure, in the room. But it needs to bring value at every single steps. And that's why you need to probably buy rather than make, to just swallow the cost of the subscription or whatever software you get to use or platform you get to use, and absorb those costs and put them back to the clients with your value add, so that you get as soon as possible to results and get to grind your teeth on those concepts. That's probably the most important.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. So I'm going to turn to Lauren. Lauren, our forthcoming podcaster. Hopefully you've got some questions for us. What's come up first?
Yeah, someone's actually just asked something on the theme of what you were just talking about, Francois, and identifying value. So they've said, as an SME, how do I identify how the industrial metaverse can benefit my business? Where do I start with that?
So, very generic question. Yeah, thank you. Let's have this overall view. So, it's hard to come and say, well, the answer is the metaverse, right? It's like a little bit like, sorry, what was the question? Because it can be the answer to anything and everything. I would break down the question. Well, first, we need to start about what was exactly the operational incentive behind the question, right? Or what we're trying to solve. And then if one component of the metaverse is the answer, so IoT or edge, digital twin, AI, collaboration or data hub or OT data platform. If any of those elements comes up more than the others, then this is probably the one that we need to drill into in the first place. Those technologies are fairly mature, if not very mature. They bring value. I'll focus on this.
Great.
Can I add something
Yes, of course.
that? So, especially from the SME perspective, I think the workforce is a big challenge. So we, as RTOs, we also struggle to recruit the right talent. And I think, Will, you'll probably say that it's very, very difficult to get, and with the aging workforce. So with these sort of technologies, I think that human-centricness of that technology is really important. So using these sort of technologies to actually upskill, train our workforce is going to be very, very important. And also the other thing, the way we do things, the way the labor roles are also changing. So 5 years, 10 years down the time with the pandemic, with hybrid working and things like that, even in 2020, we were working with some organizations where we couldn't really do the line walk. And the way we were doing it was using a headset, yeah. So things are changing, and these sort of technologies are enabling us to do our roles in a very different way and cutting out the risks and the health and safety side of things as well. So I think that human-centricness is really important as well.
I think from an SME perspective, we had 300 year 6 primary school children through both factories a couple of weeks ago for National Manufacturing Day. But they experienced my 2 factories and 2 other factories on our factory estate. But there's hundreds of factories they could experience. And it wouldn't be quite a health and safety nightmare either. You know, it allows that access of any child in any place can see, actually manufacturing isn't this dark satanic mill of fire. It's actually quite a cool place to work. So I'm quite excited from lots of the operational reasons, but also introducing these amazing workplaces that lots of young people can't access for all sorts of reasons. So I think that's maybe not a core function, but it will become a very important function of the industrial metaverse.
Well, it kind of lowers the barrier to entry to some of these tools and skills that you need. So through AI and the ability to utilize different tools in different ways, understand how to use those tools or speak to tools that are quite complex in terms of carrying out material discovery, computational chemistry, CAD and mechanical simulation. How can you access those and add value to those processes as well?
and making the tools equitable as well. I think that's going to be really, really key as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Did you want to add anything there, Neil?
Well, I think it just comes down to, so Francois talked about not building your own. So the patterns become very important here. So the components answer the exact question. The pattern helps us understand how we then build on that pattern. We just need to keep alive to that and keep sharing it, because it's horribly complex at some ends of this. You've got a big, horrible problem. You need to get down to the smaller pieces of the puzzle like we normally do. When we have any complex problem, we have to put it into bite-sized chunks. But we need to keep the vision of that. So the more we can share the patterns from successful stuff that we're doing out there, the benefit to everyone.
I think for an SME where we haven't got scale, sharing that, say we bought a laser machine from a company, we're not going to do a lot of predictive analytics on one laser machine, but sharing that across thousands of laser cutting machines and looking at how we're actually using it. So it could be very generic, but every company uses it slightly differently, that we could get some value in, we're not sharing the data of what we're doing, we're sharing, well, we are, but not the actual thing. So it's quite secure, but that some manufacturers are quite, particularly SMEs, like, I'm not sharing anything with anyone. I'm like, no one really cares what you're doing. You're not building a space rocket. You're not Elon Musk. It's not Tesla. But that shared, particularly around predictive maintenance, could be super valuable. And then that sharing cross machine types, because they've got similar bearings or shaft arrangements or conveyors or air systems on, I feel quite excited about.
Yeah, I think open source has a big role to play in enabling the metaverse. So you talked about Omniverse, the universal scene description. Part of that is the way to build those 3D models moving forward. We're working on open telemetry standards, software-defined vehicle standards that make this all open and consumable by anyone. But we're raising the level of those standards and making that available to the open source community.
Yeah, it's the data is really, really valuable, but it's the amassed data and the shared data. I wear a Whoop for my, measures my, all that type of stuff. But it's only really valuable because of it's not about me. It's about me, but it's been with all the other people's data is where the real value comes. But it's sometimes difficult to explain that to SMEs that actually, we're all competing, but we could all be stronger together.
Yeah. The incentive to cooperate is not there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And why do you think that is?
I think that collaborative ecosystem doesn't exist. So I've heard of some of these automotive ecosystems existing in the Netherlands and Germany as well. So I think there is a bit of federal government probably incentivizing these sectors to come together and share learning, because what we're talking about here is very, very complex technologies. We are also talking about, we haven't got the human capital to adapt these technology sustainability as well. So I think having these ecosystem of technology partners, designers, machine vendors, because the machine vendors needs to have that long-term strategy about making those standards or using those interoperable standards, because metaverse without the data and the connectivity is probably not going to take us anywhere, isn't it? So I think it has to be, what I'm saying is a bigger power, bringing a community together and incentivizing people to work together is probably very, very important.
Right, absolutely. Thank you. Lauren, what else have we got for our panel, please?
Someone's asked, what's the biggest obstacles towards the vision of a plug-and-play industrial metaverse?
Lots of sharp intakes of breath.
Ooh.
So I might come back to that pattern point. So over the years, with going to cloud, a number of Microsoft have done it. There are patterns of how you solve a problem, and you can just go off and deploy those. So repeatable things that you can just go and push out into the world, pay your money, you're off and away. If we're able to produce that, that gets us further into that world. But it comes back down to what is the pattern? What are we trying to solve? So, for example, in a warehouse, and in terms of the optimization of the routes and stuff through the warehouse, great. Use this truck or these trucks, because the manufacturers have signed up to the UO, right? So you can use any of these trucks. here is a pattern of information of how to make that intelligent, feed it your data, and off you go. Right? These are really component block parts that you could take off the shelf, pay your money, take off the shelf, get your value quickly. But someone has to come along and drive that, right? And someone see value in that, because these guys saw value in that because they get the compute and the subscription, right? The truck drivers should see value in that. The truck manufacturers, because they were there now for the trucks that may be bought to fulfill that warehouse. And those are the things, right? As long as everybody gets on and gets their message through, then they should hopefully bring it together.
I think it takes someone to show leadership and invest quite a considerable amount of money. I just think, Tesla have just bent the American charging standard to their way, isn't it? I thought that's never going to happen. But if you invest enough money and do such a good job, I don't agree with everything he says, but you can change the shape of what like a whole continent's standard becomes. And what happens is you create that rolling stone, don't you? That if someone goes, right, we've built this really good platform, there's a zero cost point of entry for everyone, or you have the premium version, and then all the suppliers think, oh yeah, we better, a bit like Autodesk with BIM models, isn't it? It's like, oh right, it's got to a scale where we can't afford not to produce that data. So I think there's going to be lots of competing things, but someone's got to, otherwise we're all going to be doing the same work, isn't it? Obviously SoftServe have done the work with, you're going to do that same work with a number of customers because they don't want to share. But from an SME, they're never going to be able to do that without someone going, right, here's a platform with a subscription, that we want to get you on board with.
A lot of that comes down to just being able to, repeatability, right? Being able to kind of replicate what you've done with one company to another company, which to a certain degree I think is possible and totally feasible to a certain degree. I think the thing with AI, ML in general, that world, is that you need to customize it to the machine that you're dealing with or to the operations you're dealing with, and everyone's data is slightly different. So whilst having a data model is actually not the hardest thing, it's actually getting the data together into one place, cleaning it up, and then feeding it in, and then having models running based off that. So I also say like AI, ML is not plug and play. It's always like 60, 70% can be out of the box, and then that last 30% is the customization towards the scenario that it's being put into, if that makes sense as well.
Great. Lauren.
Someone's asked, I'd like to know about how AI can optimize the end of life of a product to aid the remanufacture process.
I can
Please,
take this one. So,
thank you.
The end of life of our products depend a little bit of the product, right? So we've got, I've had good fun with my clients trying to smartify things which are properly like old generation, not digital at all. So we've got an LV panel that doesn't react, doesn't produce any data, or just like provides power to whatever motor there is behind. It's not helping me to use AI at all. So if we are talking about the end of life of a product which is digital, then we're having a completely different discussion. And here you can simulate, you can work on the data, you can have a digital twin that you can play with, and this is a completely different story. So I guess that this question is coming from a more holistic view, where I'm in the metaverse, let's say, having a full plant, a full system of assets, some of them dumb, some of them smart, producing or not data, and I need to figure out what to do with the aging of this system. AI can do a lot of things if you tell it to at the moment. Generative AI is still boxed into compartments. You need to again break down the system, have ways of simulating what or having creating data where there's none. thanks to your models that you create with or without AI. And then using AI to figure out what is the accelerating time, basically. Gathering all the data from all the different systems where you created the data, so it's called synthetic data. Data which is coming from the existing assets. Putting all this together and then using AI to help you figuring out what are the patterns, to accelerate time, to simulate and see how your asset is going to age. That's how I see it, to answer the question.
I think that's one side of it, isn't it? It's the reactive side of it. So you're using the data from your production machines, whether you're retrofitting the production machine, the legacy machines with sensors and things like that, to then extend the life of an asset, right? So you're predicting when a machine would go down and you schedule your maintenance tasks accordingly. But on the other side, I think one of you in your presentation, you were talking about cradle to cradle, but I think with circularity, we are actually thinking about cradle to cradle. So when these products are designed, how do you design it in a way then the materials or parts of the product can actually, when you hit that end of life, the parts or the materials in that artifact can be used for something different as well. So I think what you're saying is really correct, because we're looking at digital thread is a much bigger term, right? So you're thinking about how you design products better as well. To at the end of the day, it's about using these products for a much longer period of time, not in the form they're in now, maybe in a different form altogether.
Great. Has anyone else got anything to add to that? No, lovely. Well, in that case, Lauren, let's move on to another question. This is great.
Someone's sent a question. How far are we from realising tangible benefits from the industrial metaverse? And what milestones should manufacturers look for along the way?
Tangible or intangible? We're talking of tangible, right?
Tangible.
Yeah, so we're talking hard cash, right? Okay.
Well, or other benefits. Yeah. I mean, hard cash, of course, is the
I think we're already at that point. Yeah. So, instrumented factories are able to be optimized through AI and ML. So reducing energy, reducing waste, increasing the sustainability of those environments, looking at simulating product development, so shifting left some of the design decisions so that we're not building so many prototypes and wasting componentry. We can do that in the virtual environment, and then when we're going to build something, we actually are sure that it's gonna work, or more certain it's gonna work when we get to actually doing more intensive compute operations in terms of actual physics simulations, and then we actually build a product and distribute it. It actually works straight out of the box. So customers are already seeing those benefits right now through instrumenting factories, designing products in the virtual world, and then monitoring them and optimizing them throughout their life cycle.
I think it's harder currently. I'm a contract manufacturer, so I make other people's products on discrete machinery, so not production lines. I'm the technology person, but it's difficult at the moment necessarily to see how you would gain the value versus the cost at the moment to develop a digital twin in that environment, particularly in lower volume manufacturing.
Yeah, I did wonder if that was going to be the same.
Yeah.
To you. Yeah.
The kind of low volume example I've got is I used to work in a Formula One team, so they're seeking a competitive advantage on the track there. So really low volume of producing 2 cars to go racing every weekend. A lot of that is a digital twin based simulation environment of how do I build this car. There's a regulation set they have to work within that's both financial and technical. So how do I design within those 2 parameters to win races? And they do that very effectively and very quickly, but obviously scales
quite
of
value difference.
Putting widgets, but it's slightly different story. Yeah.
Fantastic.
I was jumping on tangible versus intangible a bit earlier, right? Because, always having talking about the ROI below 2 years and hard cash right away and return on investment and so on. But actually, there's a lot of intangible to a certain point value in getting this going. At Schneider Electric, we have deployed digital tools on our shop floor. So we've got, just to situate, we've got more or less 200 plants and 90 distribution centers. 130 of those have had a specific MES, manufacturing execution system, deployed throughout. Okay, and bolted onto this, the manufacturing execution system providing data in a kind of standard way, allowing to have the exact same lean manufacturing tool to support the short interval management meetings, if anyone is fluent into lean manufacturing. So it's the meetings which are happening shift after shift to get shift handover done correctly, or having know the status of the plant. And you've got like level 1 is a cell on the shop floor, level 2 is the manager of the shop floor, level 3 is the site manager with several parts of the plant. The tangible value is to know where the plant, what the plant status is at any one time. The intangible value is having everybody on the shop floor, all the operators, buying into digital. And having it not as yet another deployment of a digital tool is going to change everything from scratch, and they're going to have to learn everything again, and it's going to be boring, and maybe I'm going to lose my job eventually. But moving to, I am part of this digitalization. I can see the benefits because we made it. We designed this tool ourselves. We made not a bot, but exception. So we made it work for ourselves, and we drove adoption from this. And it's the intangible value from there became tangible when people started to interact with the tool and provide their ideas. Intangible in the sense that digital literacy improved at Schneider, and it became tangible when concrete actions came out of this and optimized our operations. I guess that the metaverse is going to do the same thing. It's going to push everybody up in terms of digital literacy, push the boundaries of what we conceive as normal on the way we collaborate, push everybody into a better understanding of what the digital world means, virtual means, digital twin, IoT, AI, the edge, all the rest of it, so that people better understand, better contribute, and at some point, something's going to come out. I can't tell what, but I'm pretty sure that something's going to come out and enrich our manufacturing lives.
But I think we have to understand the different place that people are at. You know, I'm currently embarking on a construction project, non-work related, personal construction project, and my architects designed it all in 3D, how I wanted it in bit, and I was like, right, I've got these really cool trusses being made. I said, you can send over the 3D. No, I get a 2D drawing. No, I want a 3D. No, we've got a 2D. I'm like, really? Is this still a thing? So we've got to remember that actually some people are still not even using 3D. They're still manufacturing some of the stuff in 2D. So when you try to talk to them about the metaverse, they'll be like, we haven't even got a 3D model of the thing. So, and it seems more prevalent in construction than it does in my type of engineering. Everyone does everything in 3D now, but there still is that, underbelly of...
You're always going to have people who are ahead of the pack.
Yeah.
And so we're thinking about those ones who are going to suffer from, the fail safe and the fail quick and whatever. Yeah. Suffer, maybe not. But at some point, learn something that no one else will have figured out. And it's going to be probably the tipping point, and then it's going to go from there. But unless we try, everybody who won has played at some point, right?
Yeah.
Lesser baggage, perhaps, and the learning curve is probably much smoother as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really valid point as well. Absolutely. Do anyone want to add anything to that point? Lauren, let's take another question, please.
Yep. So let's go with this one. What strategies can organisations employ to ensure a smooth transition to the industrial metaverse? And critically, how do we mitigate potential risks?
Gosh. Yes, Scott.
I think Francois kind of touched upon it a little bit in kind of indirectly. I think adoption is obviously one of the biggest hurdles you have to get to. And we've seen this with Gen AI is that sometimes like people see it as like, oh, that was quite fun to play with, and then go back to kind of whatever they were doing before. We have seen that integrating it into critical tasks, into workflows is necessary, because then it becomes part of the everyday tasks as well. So kind of making it a necessary tool to use, so it's part of an existing system, it's connected up, it's fully there, is critical to getting adoption achieved as well. So that's kind of one of the ways that you can see it, like how do you get it actually kind of like into people's working lives. Yeah.
Help it solve your biggest problem.
Yeah.
And then people value it. You know, I've done lots of things, not just like the metaverse type stuff, but I think, oh, that'd be really cool. It's like, it doesn't really solve a problem, but it's really cool. And they're the projects that always fail. But if you've got certain people like, no, I really need that, because I need that. I had that yesterday, now I need it today. And I think that's the, you know, and I always say, do something small to start with.
Yeah.
You've often given me the scalable message, which makes perfect sense, and I've heard it from others too. Would you all agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I'd probably say as well, like on the adoption topic, like I think it always helps to bring everyone along in the journey. Like if you kind of just come from above or whatever and say, hey, it's the technology, good luck. That's not ever going to fly. You have to almost let people believe that it was their idea.
Yeah.
And then they're like super proud of it and they want to make it work, and they can like, it's why low code, no code tools do well in operational environments too, is because people own it. They become, it's their product, it's their baby. They can mature it themselves. They can start to actually allow it to propagate, and then they tell their friends and everyone else, and then the adoption kind of, it's more of a pull system than a push system. Which
so strategies of scalability, empowerment, and what else can we add to that?
Benefits realization. I think we're talking about the same thing. So if the workforce actually see that the technology is actually empowering them to do their jobs better. So for example, you were talking about wearables. So I wear a smartwatch. I've got an analog watch as well. The reason why I wear my smartwatch is because it's linked to everything that I do in the gym and everything. Yeah. So I'm actually using those points to link it to my insurance, and there's a incentive to everything. So there's that benefit. So I'm using it because it benefits me. So it's like for any technology, people have got to see the benefit, because I'm a technologist. I'm a bit of a magpie. So every shiny thing that I see, I'm like, oh, I've got to do that. Yeah. But then the question comes, why? Why do you need? Exactly. But manufacturers don't have that luxury, right? And especially a small manufacturer, we haven't got that luxury. So I think there has to be a real benefit gain before a technology is adopted. And if that's not done in a sequential manner, so whether it's a proof of concept at a cell level, where you're trying out some new technologies, you've identified the challenges, barriers, opportunities, you've learned from your ecosystem, whether it's suppliers, whether it's manufacturers of your scale or bigger manufacturers, then you try it out at your factory level. So within one production line, multiple production line, but then there are a lot of factories just spread across the world as well. So we've always seen there are a number of factories under the same banner, and in some regions they are actually digitalized, in some regions they're absolutely not. So how do you then pass on information between these two facilities? Because there is a data transfer of paper and paperless as well in those cases as well. So again, starting small, trying out things, understanding what works, understanding what doesn't work for your organization is all about strategizing, as you're saying, but bringing people on the journey is really important, because it's your workforce who are going to then get the full potential of digitalization. It's not the senior executives who are going to continue encouraging people to adopt, right?
I'd be remiss, considering I'm from an auditing firm, if I didn't say about security controls, right? No, the challenge with some of this stuff is that even with, say, the co-pilots and the AI pieces at the moment, a large part of my day is talking to InfoSec and making sure they're all really happy with the idea of all this stuff happening around them and what it means to their organisation and the data that they've got. So there's a part here where, you know, just as they are concerned about AI and co-pilots and things like that, suddenly having all these interconnected things going on around the place for some certain use cases, there has to be a lot of work there with the organisation to make sure they're ready for that. Data becomes a critical piece. How do we secure that data? And the other side is just the physical infrastructure. You know, I walk around manufacturing sites, there's a case on the wall, dusty as anything, with various cables sticking out of it. You've got dodgy old machines sticking next to a robotic arm, kind of running that whole thing. There is a whole piece there around having somewhere ready to adopt the technology that may have to be done, even if they want to fail fast, right? Just simply because they haven't invested in the wider piece for a while. So there is these stepping stones that we have to think about as well as we go around it.
There's definitely an unlock. We installed 42-inch 4K screens at every workstation, just a low power PC for doing a specific thing, like clocking on and off for jobs. But then suddenly that infrastructure gives you access to all sorts of things, and then people doing stuff you weren't expecting. This shadow IT, and you're like, IT, like, oh, do you know they're doing this? I'm like, is it going to break anything? Well, no, probably not. Is it making them work? Yeah. So you allow, and you get these like unusual digital champions. So we've got a young lady in the office that we just go for some Power BI tools, something really simple, and she's got access to the ERP database through the back end. And all of a sudden, she's like this. Everyone goes, "Oh, could you do this for me? Could you make this thing for me? Could you make?" And like this person they wouldn't have necessarily interacted with now has become this sort of central point for, you know, like a digital champion, which wasn't. She wanted to solve her own problem, and then someone got wind of, well, she's got this thing that tells you all this information, and now they all want to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's quite exciting sometimes.
That kind of citizen developer, citizen data scientist, almost, or data analyst is a really prevalent thing because the people closest to the business process or the processes happening in the plant know how best to fix and augment that, and now they've got access to tools to do that through low code, no code. You can also now ask co-pilots to build something for you. I've got this problem. How could you solve it with these tools? And that's where we're going to see this move to, is this kind of agentic architecture where you say, I've got this problem, how could you solve it? And it'll go off and build itself and integrate itself into your kind of, sounds a bit scary, I must admit, but integrate itself into your environment, pick up tools and carry out actions for you. It's almost like kind of self-automating, self-optimizing tools there. And coming back to your point around kind of, I think you touched on data, that's really an important building block of this. None of this really works without data underpinning it all. So machine learning and AI models don't work without data. Being able to predict and take proactive action in your plant doesn't work without the data. And so instilling that kind of data culture within your organization and making sure people understand the importance of data, collecting more data in a digital format so then you can utilize it to optimize and build better products and operate in a better way is really important.
Do we think we're about to use AI to help clean up and label some of the data, or is that he's pulling a face over there?
Well, this man's got a plan for that, to be fair to him. It's the goal, right? Ultimately, it's clever enough to look over some things and use some patterns. It's never going to be, well, I certainly hope it isn't never going to be, I won't have a job. It's never going to be the answer fully. It will always need someone to interact with it and give it some boundaries and some guidance. But it's getting horribly clever. Right? At the end of the day, you know, my own personal work day is sped up through using them. I don't know, probably an hour or two a day saving just by using the. That's right. Thanks. But you know, that's the reality of it. You know, if you invested the time and the effort into it, it does pay you back.
I think it's like that labeling aspect of, here's an example, you need to label it. We almost don't need to do that anymore. So I can't remember who mentioned it, but the synthetic data. So give it a few examples, create more examples of how things, you know, if you're talking about damage detection, how could you create lots of different kind of examples of that damage, but synthetically? So you give it 1,000, 1,000,000, however many you want, but you don't have to go through and label individual bits of damage on a panel or on a component. You can get the machine to do that for you, and it's almost kind of self-learning.
I was actually at a supplier event for one of my biggest customers, and they were having the problem. Someone had missed a weld off of a structural element off these 50 things, and they went on the side of the building with a thing on them. That's not great. So they went, right, we've got to photograph every weld, not something we made. But then they're like, we're now going to use this AI to see if the world's on there, rather than they'd outsourced it to India, I think. So they have to look through all 4 photos of everything, go, yeah, their worlds are on there. That must be the best job in the world. But they had the problem of, well, they're all right. So how are we going to? We don't want to weld a load up wrong.
Yeah.
So, but you're saying with synthetic data now, you can
create more wrong stuff.
Yeah. To train the model to then make sure. Yeah.
Yeah. In the example I showed, it was a conveyor belt, and you had the nuts and bolts. We used 2% of the realistic data, but what we were also simulating was like different lighting conditions and putting hands in front of the camera, etc. So you bring in like just different scenarios into that one environment, and then train the system off of that, which is pretty cool.
Wow. Well, we are nearly running out of time. Of course, before we do, I just wanted to take or just pick up on a point that Will made earlier on, incidentally, which was you mentioned that your shiny factory floor and you had all the school visits. I have to say, if I'd been year 6, I would have loved to have seen a dark satanic mill. Just saying. Anyway, listen, I'd ask you to remain seated, but please, can we show our appreciation to our panellists, to Scott, Francois, Neil, Paul, Nandini, Will, and our moderator, Lauren. And that does nearly conclude Digital Manufacturing Today for today. But before we go, obviously a huge thank you to all of our presenters and panellists throughout the entire day. And of course, a huge thank you to all of our sponsors of the event, to KPMG, to Dell, Epicor, and of course, all of the others who have contributed to making today happen. Once again, thanks to our media partners, Manufacturing Management and MEPCA. And of course, thank you to all of you, without which we wouldn't have any event. That's both you who've been physically here at the MTC today and all of you joining us from all around the world. Our sincere thanks to all of you. I should say, if you have enjoyed today, you may, of course, be interested in joining future events that are coming up. They are free to attend and in this venue, including Manufacturing Technology Today on the 16th of January, 2025, and the National Manufacturing Summit on the 27th of February. Info on both of those is on the MTC website. And finally, a new date, hot off the press, has been announced for next year's Digital Manufacturing Today 2025. You can join us next year on the 22nd of October. So please do save the date. We're going to be sharing communications on social media and emails for anyone interested in returning again. And of course, another quick plug for Lauren at the end there. Do listen out for announcements on the podcast, which will be coming up very, very soon, before the end of the year. Fantastic. For now, once again, thank you to all of you for your attention and energy throughout the entire day. It's been an absolute pleasure. From all of us here at the MTC to all of you, thank you so much and good afternoon. Safe journey home.